Sup broskies? Hello, welcome to this shit show. I wanted to talk about my story, and I don't want to label it as my eating disorder story because there's a lot more to it than just the eating disorder, so that's why it is my story. Let's go back to the beginning. January 23rd, 2001, 8:20 in the morning, I came out of my mother's womb. That is actually a lie. She had a C-section. So I grew up within a good household. My parents were very loving and supportive. I started noticing the world more attentively, and I noticed myself as a human being a little bit more when it came around to about 5th, 6th grade. I was put into this Alpha program, which is like an honors program for younger students, and I was put into this group of people that was separated from the normal population of like my grade. And most of the people in the Alpha program had already been in it through elementary. You know, they had like their own little community, so I was coming in as like a baby. And so that was a bit strange, and I felt out of place, but I was happy to be in the program. And I had, throughout 6th grade, I had some trouble with like trying to find my friend group. I would not consider it bullying, but I had been bullied from my friend group through the like first half of 6th grade year, and it came to one point where I decided one day in my last period, which was social studies, that I was not going to be friends with them anymore and that I was going to find new friends. And so I went up to one of my best friends, who I still talk to today, and asked if I could be their friend. And that's when I started changing my friend group and felt more comfortable with myself and where I was at that moment. And 7th grade came, and I was becoming more and more aware of my body and how it compared to others, like most kids do, which is sad. But I had been in gymnastics, and I had realized that my stomach was more round. I didn't have my collarbones popping out of my shoulders, and that was kind of alarming to my brain, or to my innocent mind. I was like, why am I not like these people? So I quit gymnastics after doing it for 4 years and decided to focus more on cross country and track and my schoolwork, because the workload in middle school was absolutely insane. So I had these high expectations that I tried meeting along with cross country and track. And my parents divorced in 7th grade. Going through middle school, which is such a transitional period in your time, or in your life, and also dealing with a transitional period in my life at home. I was frustrated, but I didn't really know that at the time. I wasn't aware of that. And 8th grade came, and I was starting to mature a little bit more, but I was still, you know, the dumbass kid that I was in 6th and 7th grade. But my mom had remarried in the summer of 8th grade. That is a fairly quick time period to get remarried. I was getting really, really frustrated with myself because I was frustrated at the situation where my mom was remarrying, and I had so much support from both sides, and my soon-to-be stepfather was really supportive and kind and caring. And I didn't know what to do because I felt helpless, and I started feeling so sick of myself and the world around me, and Then that kind of goes into ninth grade when I transitioned to high school. I was really struggling in ninth grade with depression and anxiety, and my body image just grew worse and worse. Then ninth grade, spring break, I had started to try eating healthier. And so I dedicated myself to trying to eat healthier and do schoolwork better. And I had been eating healthier, and that's when the eating disorder kind of took a hold of me. Sophomore year, the beginning, I was doing fairly okay except for the few classes. I was still really trying hard in cross country, and I was able to come home after school when cross country ended and be home alone for a while, and that's when I started binging. And sometimes I would have considered binging like a normal meal or just a snack. Other times my binging would be going through the cabinet and eating everything that I could see that sounded somewhat good and spitting some of it out and then not finishing and trying to hide the wrappers and the disappearance of food. And that went on for quite a while. Then my depression, along with the binging, had gotten much, much worse. And I had told myself that if I was not going to stop binging, because I'd been trying but I never seemed to stop, then I would have to compensate for what I was eating in another way. And that's when I started purging. So I was trying to do track and go through my second semester while binging and purging daily. And that's when the fall semester, the first semester of junior year, I had been talking to a friend online for quite some time, and she had encouraged me to talk to my parents, and I had refused, and I finally did agree with her. And so I called my mom on the phone in the woods while I was at my dad's house that week and spilled the tea of everything. And it was god awful, of course. I still regret it, sadly. But I'm also glad that I did it. So from then on, I started seeing a therapist and a dietitian and have been going to sessions outpatient for a while and tried balancing school and everything with that. And then it got to a point in the second semester of junior year where I was probably at my lowest. I was extremely depressed and anxious all the time. So I spoke up after a while and told my therapist what was happening. And that's when I went to a short-term hospital for my suicidal ideation. And they weren't specialized in eating disorders, so although I felt more safe, my eating was getting worse and it was fueling my eating disorder. I was able to come back home and go to school for about another month, and eventually I reluctantly agreed with my therapist, my dietitian, and my parents that maybe higher level treatment was needed. Towards the end of my junior year, I went to Wisconsin for an inpatient treatment, and I had not known originally that I was going to inpatient. I thought I had been going to residential, and if you know anything about treatments, inpatient is much more strict than residential and more about just getting you medically stable and safe. I met lovely people there, but it wasn't beneficial in the way of, or in the aspect of trying to help me figure out things and understand my actions or my thoughts and ways to cope with them, although they touched on that. And after 10 days being an inpatient, I was then transferred to Chicago, Illinois for a residential treatment where I stayed 5.5 weeks in a house with lovely girls and counselors and a lovely therapist. There, it really helped me. As much as I am reluctant to say that, it was beneficial for me to go. And although I was spending like the first half of my summer away from home and inside a house facing some of my biggest fears, I really appreciate that I had the opportunity to go. The majority of the time when I was there, I was more focused on the outside. It's like my school, how my parents felt, how my parents had to travel every weekend, how much money it was costing, and that really drove my anxiety to new levels. And I was just kind of stuck in my head the entire time. So I could have definitely spent my time there actually trying, but I had the mindset of just wanting to get out, and that I was going to do whatever I needed to do at that time to get out and go home and go back and retreat to what I was doing before. And I'm still working through. I'm not necessarily doing any better, but I am trying still, and I'm still going to therapy and to dietary sessions and trying to work things out so I can go to college and pursue what I want to do, and that's given me a lot of motivation. The moral of the story is that if you are struggling, or if you know anyone who might be struggling, whether that be with eating disorder, with depression, anxiety, psychosis, schizophrenia, anything that could be classified as struggling, reach out and talk to them. Or if you are the one struggling, talk to someone else. Although it is such a hard thing to do, and it's so painful to talk about it or to acknowledge that you might need a little more help, it is worth it, and it may not be worth it in the short term or like immediately. I encourage you to reach out, and I promise you are not alone. And sometimes being alone is scary, and sometimes not being alone is scary. Yeah, you just kind of have to go and keep going forward. I hope you guys weren't bored by this, and I hope that this video or sharing my story could be beneficial in any way. Yeah, anyways, I hope you all have a lovely day, night, week, month, year, decade, century, life, and that you take care of yourself and just keep plodding on. So yeah. Peace out.